So in today's video, we're going to be talking about 3 things that should happen at impact that you possibly weren't aware of. But get these right and it can unlock some better golf for you. So the theory is pretty simple, right? It's improve your impact, get that part of your golf swing better, then you'll start to hit better shots, play the game better, shoot lower scores, and probably have more fun. So that's really our ultimate goal, is to try and improve or develop someone's impact to allow them to do that. And that's the topic of today's video, and covering some really key concepts that so many golfers don't know or get wrong, or they slightly have a poor understanding of those. But just before we get into the video, I just want to make you aware of my brand new website, which launched last year actually. And on there are some training series, some kind of in-depth, longer form series that can really help you work on your game in a more systematic way, rather than just these kind of 5 to 10 minute videos here on YouTube. I'll pop a link in the description box. I'll also pop a link up in the corner. There's a couple of training series on there now which you can access. I'd love you to head over there, take a look. I really believe they can help you with your game. So 3 things in today's video, and there are a couple of drills here, but actually this is a little bit more about just trying to get it clear in your mind about what you're trying to do. I'm a huge believer in, if you're trying to change something in your golf swing, and obviously we're talking impact here, it is incredibly important that we have the correct understanding of what should actually be happening. If that's wrong, if what you think you should do is incorrect, you're unfortunately rarely going to get to the point that you want to be. So the first part of impact, and we're talking here about what is the body doing, and we're talking here about the shoulders, the torso, the hips, and the legs. So I think many of us would appreciate that from the top of the golf swing, we would like some rotation of the body towards the target. And we know that at impact, we would generally like to see the lower body a little bit open this way, and even the chest a little bit open. And we often know that the more rotational speed we can create, it often relates to a little bit more distance. But what many people don't appreciate is that when we actually make contact with a ball, and in fact, probably the last 2 to 3 feet of the golf swing until impact, the body isn't really doing a lot. It's actually fairly static. Now, it's not static, there is some movement, but the rotation has already happened. And it's what we call the sequencing. So when we can look at the sequencing of the body, what we would generally see is that the lower body, we'll call that the hips, they start to rotate and they increase in rotational speed. But at some point, that rotational speed starts to slow down until they're not rotating as fast. At that point, the shoulders start to accelerate and they start to rotate and rotate and rotate. But again, at some point they begin to slow down. When they slow down, the arm accelerates, and then at some point that slows down and the club head accelerates. So when the club head is accelerating into the golf ball towards impact, the body's already started to slow down, or what we call decelerate. And decelerating the body helps us increase the speed out into the arms. Now, I'm not telling anybody here to start and swing through the ball like this with no body movement. That's not what we're saying. But what we don't want you to try and do is from the top feel like you rotate everything as aggressive as you can, because what's going to happen is you're going to get very out of sync. You're going to get the club head left behind. You're most likely going to hit poor strikes that come from the heel. It's very difficult to square the face, and it's very difficult to get the most amount of speed into that golf ball. So a great little exercise is just to actually rehearse that, is just to go up to the top and feel like you start to accelerate that rotation. As you can see, I'm rotating, but then I actually slow that down as I start to feel like I release the club head through the ball. Now, the body is moving through impact. We're not saying it's not, but it's just not rotating at the rate that it was earlier in the downswing. Think about if you were going to throw a ball as far as you can throw it. From here, you would start to rotate your body aggressively, but that at some point would start to reduce and slow down as the arm took over and through the golf ball. Now, for many of you, if we gave your golf ball to throw, that movement and sequence would happen relatively naturally. You wouldn't throw a golf ball by rotating continuously with the body, because you'd want to throw it probably to the left, or you'd probably then have to start to use the arm a little bit earlier than you want, and it doesn't feel as sequenced or as well timed, and it's just not particularly efficient to do it that way. So as I say, there's not really, other than that one we did, there's not really a drill here. It's more of just to understand we are not trying to accelerate the body continuously through the golf ball. That is point number one and concept number one. Concept number two, and this is a big one, it's really important, and certainly I've done videos on similar topics in the past, but we're talking about that lead wrist. Now, we're going to kind of ignore the top of the backswing. What we would generally like to see is when a golfer is getting towards this delivery position that we put the club in, the lead wrist is pretty flat, almost starting to arch or bow. Now, we know that that controls the club face, and this is, you know, possibly the one part of the golf swing that so many golfers, you know, get wrong, and they get this kind of cupped wrist where the club face is open. So many of you will be working on trying to flatten this wrist. What this flat wrist should help you do is achieve an impact position where the wrist is also flat. What that does is it allows us to get the handle a little bit more forwards, and it allows us to de-loft the club and helps us with ball striking. And this would be really helpful for many of you out there, and I've done a video fairly recently about the lead wrist. I'll link that in the corner. However, when we look at impact and we took an image of impact, what we're looking at is a static image of where this wrist is at a certain point in the golf swing. That image, that visual that we get, does not tell us what that wrist is in the process of doing. That wrist, through impact, should be in the process of going from this kind of arch position, and just prior to impact, it should be starting to move towards this cupped position. The key part here is it's not there at impact. It's going from, let's say, arched towards flat impact, and then it moves towards this position. What we are not trying to do with that lead wrist is keep it arched, 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 arched all the way through. Because if you do this and start to rotate the forearm, you're going to hit it super far left. Now, the little visual I'd give you here, and why this is so important, is that when it starts to go from this flat to this cupped position, and I'm kind of making that a little extreme there, it's great for speed, huge for speed. It's a power accumulator that we want to make most of. If I asked you with your lead hand to imagine you've got a frisbee, how far you could throw that frisbee with your lead arm, you would most likely arch or bow that wrist. You would most likely use your body, very similar to what we've done in point one, you'd rotate that body, you'd slow that body down, and then you would use your arm and you would take this wrist, which is bowed, and you would massively extend that wrist this way to give that frisbee an extra boost of speed as you release. My wrist here, I'm not sure if you can see that, hugely cupped, hugely arched. This is super important. Now, the golfers out there who are not playing particularly great golf, they might be doing that, but they're just doing it far too early. So again, really, this is a key concept that we really need to get right. How do you practice that? Well, take an alignment stick or something very similar, hold it quite close to the end, and very simply just place yourself into a position here where the alignment stick is fairly level with the ground, wrist is slightly arched, and then just try and accelerate the end as much as you can. Move to here. And if you're just trying to accelerate it, you'll probably find that that wrist will go from an arched to a cupped position, and hopefully the mic is picking up the fact that there's a little bit of zip or a little bit of whip in that. If I try and keep this arched, it's harder for me to put speed in. Now, this little exercise, and I actually did a video a few weeks back of trying to rehearse to impact, is useful for some people. You know, if someone's releasing it early, we might well train them as a rehearsal, as a drill, to kind of hit some shots where they're holding this position on the way through. But that's more of an exercise to train impact. When we're looking at creating speed and the reality of what happens, arched to cupped, arched to cupped, arched to cupped. Create that zip, create that noise, get that wrist moving. It's going to be a great way for you to increase speed. And also it's going to help you hit the ball higher, and very often, depending on where you play, higher ball flight can be a little bit more useful to you. And what is the final concept? Well, the final concept is really just how the grip moves as we move towards impact. To demonstrate this, I'm going to hold very much down onto the kind of metal of the golf club, and I want you to pay attention to the grip end. And I'm going to kind of simulate a delivery and an impact. And I just want you to trace the grip end of the club. It moves towards the ball, towards the ball, towards the ball, kind of towards the target. And then as I start to accelerate the club head, you'll notice that grip will start to move up and back. It's now kind of midsection of my body when at some point it was over my trail leg. Now, it's exaggerated a little bit due to where I'm holding it on the golf club. What we are not trying to do, and this is again, unfortunately, something that so many golfers get wrong, is if they're trying to get the hands forward, which for many golfers would help them play better golf, they're doing it by trying to drive the grip forwards this way. And they actually just force the club shaft too much across the golf ball. Very similar to what we said in point number 1. Tends to mean that the club face is way open, tends to mean that we get poor strikes, robs you of speed in the club head, which in turn costs you distance, and doesn't allow you to fairly naturally square the face. So here's a great little exercise that you can do, and I'm going to tee this ball up super high for this, and you'll see why. Now this could well be an air shot on YouTube. I'm going to take my lead hand, I'm going to place it on the top where I normally would, and I'm going to place my trail hand, kind of 2 fingers on the metal and the 2 fingers on the grip. And what I'm really going to try and do is make a little backswing, get into my delivery position, and then notice how I'm going to make this movement through the ball where I kind of pull my left hand sort of back up into my body and my right hand out towards the golf ball. This is really the movement that we're trying to train through impact, as opposed to some of the golfers who are trying to drive the handle too far forwards. Now, with that ball teed up, I should be able to make a half decent attempt at kind of hitting it. Okay, not the greatest golf shot, but you get the idea. And you'll notice where I am at this point. This wrist is starting to cup. The body started to slow down a little bit through impact, and the grip started to move sort of back and up. The move into the grip is key. If we can get the grip moving correctly, we start to unlock so many of the things that are going to help you play better golf. The club face starts to kick out to the golf ball with more speed. The club face starts to square up a little bit more naturally without you having to manipulate it. Again, great for sort of direction. And if we can match that with, the other things that we've spoken about, we start to get the impact happening with more consistency. And more consistency, as you can imagine, is kind of the holy grail, really. Many of you will be able to hit the shots that you want on the golf course many times, but it's just being able to do that time after time after time. So there's 3 things there which, for me, when I coach, those are the things that I see golfers misinterpreting, or maybe just not understanding as much as they could, getting wrong, whatever you want to kind of term that. But improving those and getting them right in your mind can certainly help you play some better golf. And that one was a little bit off the bottom of the golf club, so 10-minute video on impact, and I didn't quite do it myself, but I'm going to blame that on first shot of the day. It's about 8:30 in the morning, so we'll just put it down to the time, the conditions, and the fact that it was the first swing of the day. But I'm sure you can make a better job at it than me by following those 3 points. Bit of practice, bit of training, and you'll probably be able to do a little bit better than I did just there. So thanks for watching. Usual stuff is down below. There's a comments box there. I would love to get your feedback on this video. There's a thumbs up button. If you did like the video, give that a click, and that button there, that will allow you to be a free subscriber of the channel. Would love to have you along for the journey, and I really believe that these videos can help you play some better golf. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here again soon.